I played two games yesterday. The goal was simple: find something short but interesting to speak about that would just be a little bit easier of a video before I head off to the Atlanta Major. The result was that I thought, what about Homefront? I know it didn't review super well, but at the time I played it at lunch and I remember there being a couple of really good scenes in that game that are worth being talked about. So I went, and just over 3 hours later, I had found myself baffled by how you could have scenes that on the surface had so much power and significance, and yet failed to really pull at my heartstrings. Somehow, though, in a high flying game all about speed, movement, and dynamic combat, Titanfall 2 managed to have moments that did move me in a runtime that was almost the same. Now, don't get me wrong, there was 5 years in between the release of these two games, and from a visual perspective, that's huge. But the ability to convey emotions to a digital character on a screen was nothing new at this point. I promise we're going to talk about Titanfall for the majority of this video, but just for a second, I need to touch on Homefront and how it's just bafflingly not as good when on paper these moments should be incredible. The long and short of it is that you're living in the United States under North Korean occupation, and we will start the game being dragged out of our house by troops and taken on a bus to, I assume, like a concentration camp or something of the sort. And you'll see all kinds of atrocities being committed on your path. After you're rescued and forced into the resistance, you'll be witness to the worst parts of what humanity can offer. You'll be betrayed more than once. You'll witness the results of mass executions as civilians are dumped into a mass grave in front of you. You'll dive into the grave yourself to avoid detection. Your own allies will attack the enemy with white phosphorus, which will burn them alive before your very eyes, with the only excuse given that you stole from the enemy. They were going to use it on us. You'll return home to find your leader tortured to death and innocent civilians executed, the result of your actions going beyond even that, as you'll see whole neighborhoods being burned down as punishment for your defiance. You'll shoot fellow Americans who don't seem to be any better than the occupying force we're fighting against. This should all be so damn interesting. They genuinely created a narrative where all the worst realities of war were brought up right in front of us as we participated in it. We fought alongside people who, in a lot of ways, were no better than the people we were fighting against. The character of Connor was so interesting because we didn't know him. From a glance, his actions were violent acts of rebellions against those who had done the same to his friends and family. We even see the forming of a new Connor right before our eyes as Rihanna, yeah, I know her name is, moving on. As after the torture and executions at the Oasis, she seemed ready to tear down anyone in her path. But we don't know Connor. Are his actions in reaction to what he had experienced? Or would he have done the same thing to them had the shoe been on the other foot and we were in their home? The sad reality is that these unanswered questions could have made for a really interesting story, but they weren't asked in Homefront or explored in its sequel. You could explain away the problems with this story with its length, but you know where I'm going with this. There's another short game that kills it on all levels from start to finish, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. Let's get into Titanfall 2.
Wind, 3 knots, heading 274. Range, 95 meters. Projectile mass, 89 kilograms. Trust me. Private Cooper, our journey is far from over.
Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't a perfectly fair comparison, and I know that, but I really did play both of these games back to back on the same day, and the experience was just so different I wanted to compare them, if only for a moment. Titanfall 2 did something with its story that was just so incredibly impressive, and I want to tell you that it comes from the pacing, or the writing, or the level design, or the gameplay. But there's really no one thing to point to because frankly, it all just blends together so seamlessly that you have to attribute the whole as being more than the sum of its parts. The best way to approach this, I think, is just to go ahead and break down the whole story from start to finish, so that's exactly what we're going to do. We open with a cinematic talking about the most dangerous combatant on the battlefield, the pilot, and it really does a great job of setting the tone for the game. Then we hop into a training program with Captain Lastimosa, who is the pilot taking us under his wing as we try to go from rifleman to pilot ourselves. And as much as it bothers me I can't get a sense low enough to aim with, the movement training is the important part, and it's great fun working to run the course faster and faster. You get pulled for deployment, however, and it's now back to being a rifleman. Most games this short would drop you right into the full experience, but the way they give you a little taste in training just to be dumped back in as a simple rifleman and reminded what it's like to be so limited is perfect. Even with how short the sequence is, just spending a little bit of time feeling vulnerable, it does wonders. You end up being in the last place a rifleman wants to find himself as an enemy Titan lands and wipes your squad before you're saved by Lastimosa, who will fall himself after making a valiant attempt at fighting off a superior enemy force. You get the chance to say goodbye to him as you wake up, where he shifts command of his Titan BT-7274 to your command and tells you to take his jump gear. The road to becoming a pilot isn't over quite yet, as you'll still need to recover 2 batteries to power BT, and your jumpsuit will slowly give you more and more of its full abilities as you search for the power sources. This is actually the first time I had the game set up to hard and was pleasantly surprised to find an incredibly fun game balance where, while you could be extremely powerful, the enemies could as well. Playing as a rifleman is the fastest way to get killed in Titanfall. You hold an advantage over average troops as a pilot, but how much of an advantage is down to how well you use your abilities. Yes, you can win most gunfights heads up, but there's limitations. Enemies will swarm you, and you can only win so many fights at once if you stay in one place. To be still is to be dead on the battlefield, and that's doubly true here. You'll learn quickly that while you're a step ahead, you're still human. That is, until you remember what sets you apart on the battlefield, and that's your Titan. It doesn't really take too long to get into BT for the first time, but because they made you work for it, even if it was only a few minutes, the experience feels even more special. With the link established, the two of you will push ahead, with your only chance being to reconnect with the other militia forces far, far away. There's a lot of ground to cover, so BT recommends a shortcut through an enemy facility. The two of you will separate early into the compound as you will go on foot to unlock a path big enough for BT to get through, and man, the big arena you find yourself in was surprisingly difficult for me, as you will find yourself having to fight to survive for what feels like ages. I learned two things here: the terror I could wreak on the battlefield as a pilot with a playground, and just how much fun shotguns were in this game. Not usually a weapon I lean towards. You'll have your first boss fight here with Kane, which I have to say is one of the few areas I don't think this game excels in. As a pilot, I feel constantly vulnerable but dangerous, and while I like the tremendous feeling of power and safety you get upon embarking your Titan, I struggled much more against large groups than I did against any one of the bosses. But that's a minor hangup, and it's quickly forgotten. One of the biggest strengths of the campaign is that it's aware it's short and uses every minute available to it, finding moments of reflection but often moving along at a furious pace. Like right here, where BT gets captured and we have to move across the facility in order to catch up to him. You figure out pretty quick that combat is secondary here, and what you should actually be doing is bounding through the facility as fast as possible. You'll be greeted by a manufacturing line and use it as your guide across the facility, chasing it from one piece to another. It's great fun, and I enjoyed constantly changing environments you find yourself navigating. It's as slow or as fast as you make it, but man, when you get in a groove, it's great fun feeling like you're on a speed run. There is one missed opportunity here, however. You'll end up in a finished practice field fighting off at first Stalkers and then Reapers, and while they can be fun opponents, what this section should have been was a pilot versus pirate arena. Even if you had cheated and let them get away at the end before we finished off the fight Titan v Titan, the chance to go one-on-one with someone equally as elusive, creative, and devastating as you in an arena like this one would have been perfect. Alas, though, it was not to be, but man, catching up to Ash after she had tormented me for the last hour moving me around this frickin' facility was so great, and she made a very stylish entrance. And while this fight was short, under a minute actually, which is crazy for a boss encounter, the relative fragility of both of our frames, along with the willingness to engage toe to toe from both parties, made it feel incredible as we settled our differences like pilots should, at 100 miles an hour and with incredible violence. I also have to say, landing the finisher on this one felt very rewarding. Not to mention, BT had some excellent input as we made our way out.
Pilot, I have concluded we should take no further shortcuts.
We reach what is supposed to be our rendezvous point with the Major, but we find out it's a whole lot of corpses and a mystery to be solved as we search for Anderson. When people talk about Titanfall 2 in general, or specifically in the level design, you're likely to hear about this mission right here. You explore an IMC facility in order to figure out where Major Anderson went and then what happened, but there's a massive twist. Whatever they did here would cause ripples in time itself, bouncing you back and forth between the past and present. Where it really gets cool is when you download the info from Anderson's helmet, allowing you to know what he was doing here, then recovering the device that allows you to choose what time you're in. You will use this to both investigate what happened here, along with using it to navigate the facility. The whole process is amazing as you get the puzzle solving aspect changing what time you're in to get around obstacles such as closed doors and bits of fire. But you get to absolutely bamboozle security forces you encounter along the way. It doesn't take too long for the time travel to feel like second nature, and getting into a groove with it feels amazing as you've added yet another layer of movement dynamic in the game. There's a plot here that mostly revolves around the fact the IMC intends to use the technology as a weapon to destroy the militia planet of Harmony, but in all honesty, in this moment, who cares? All that matters is dancing through time. We reconnect with BT and work in the past to get a scan of the device so we can report on it to the militia, but in our way we'll be hit by what I can only describe as time stopping. I can't even begin to describe how cool this is, but I don't think I have to as you're seeing it right in front of you. Scanning the core will mark the end of this adventure as it's time to move on, but like all things here in Titanfall, it may be short-lived, but it will exist for a very long time in our memories. I like to imagine this game was just a bunch of level designers turned loose on a game who happen to be fantastic writers at the same time. It's hard to make you understand without playing the game, but you will bond with BT over the course of the game, often through simple A or B responses that let you choose how you interact with him over the course of the game. These conversations humanize him in such a wonderful way, and so do the movements he makes. In this mission, you will link up with other militia forces and work to fix a communication center so you can get in touch with the main fleet. This will involve yet another unique mechanic as you're given an arc tool which allows you to hit buttons from a distance, allowing you to travel across the facility. To get to the dish, the only way across will be to have BT throw you, and this is what I mean about the humanity of his movements. I bet I don't have to play the audio in this scene for you to feel it. How, with a simple look back, getting thrown across a ravine feels so much more possible all of a sudden. I'm not sure if it was the arena or the fact that I just felt more connected to BT in this moment, but the boss fight with Richter felt great as we seemed to dance around the battlefield. It's even better when the militia shows up to get us and we have this moment.
Captain Ty Lastimosa was killed in action. I am now linked to an acting pilot, Rifleman Jack Cooper.
Wait a minute. Lastimosa linked you to a rifleman?
Yes, he had no other options.
Understood. We'll get you transferred to a fully qualified pilot.
Objection. Cooper is my pilot. Our combat effectiveness rating now exceeds 90%. Request permission to retain this link.
You're lucky our backs are up against the wall, BT. Permission granted. That's high praise coming from a machine, Cooper.
We're officially a pilot for the first time in this game, and we get to roll with all the others into battle against a massive contingent of IMC forces that I actually found extremely difficult. The whole game I had felt comforted while being within my Titan. The vulnerability of being on foot was gone, and now I was not only alongside BT, but the whole of the militia. And yet the game threw me another curveball, putting me in a fight so massive I really had to struggle to persevere. This level is long and it is hard, encouraging me to really use a lot of the loadouts available on the battlefield as the conditions changed. We spend a lot of time chasing down the Ark, but would fail and watch it fly away before our eyes as we mount up and give chase in the air. This mission, like all the others I should admit, is fucking sick, as you're attacked by Viper, who is cool as hell and forced to improvise. You get thrown again, and this time the fear is gone because we've done this before. We trust BT. The stakes are higher, but you have more help at your side, and at this point you're likely very comfortable moving through a battlefield. We work to take down the anti-aircraft guns on board the enemy ship so that our team can board and we can take control of it. I tried to play it off and just be one of the boys, but man, the other pilots are so damn cool, and it's awesome to fight alongside them. You steer the ship you've taken to line up with the one carrying the Ark before BT will hop aboard and you embark. On top of the ship, Viper will show up, and man, he's so cool, man. I gotta say it. He's cooler than us.
Your journey ends here, pilot. The skies belong to me. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
Take on the Ace head first and get ready for another fastball over to the Draconis before... Damn. I mean, come on. Watching BT fight is so... It does really feel like two people fighting. It's just so well done. It hurts to see your friend take damage like that, but at least you got to help out. And the two of you will press on together to recover the Ark. It goes wrong though, as your chance at escape is cut off, but whatever happens, BT isn't going to leave you alone. You wake up in the hands of the mercenaries you've been fighting over the course of the game, and with the Ark secured inside of BT, they have to find a way to force it out of him. They will do this by threatening your life, and as it hangs in the balance, BT will ask you to trust him. The move will save your life, but be the destruction of BT along with the loss of the Ark. Thankfully, there's hope as you take the Seer Kit. Inside it is a smart pistol, which is by far what I miss the most about the first game. A data knife and BT's logic core, meaning you can take your friend with you. Running through the base with the smart pistol is probably what I would consider to be peak Titanfall, as it takes care of the aiming, allowing you to keep up speed as much as possible. It's probably too strong to leave in your hands for too long, and having it at only this moment makes it feel rather special, but damn, I want more of this. Fight your way outside and the militia will drop a new Titan, allowing you to slot in BT's core, and just like that, your old friend is there welcoming you back. You get some fire support from above, but for the most part, you're on your own as you charge in trying to stop the firing of the Ark, which will have you fighting off Sloane first. Pro tip, don't try to go bar for bar with her laser cannon, it's just too much. But the fight is fun and you'll get to desperately try to disable the weapon. It seems we're out of time and out of options, but BT has a plan, loading us into the firing system, throwing us one more time before finishing the mission while sacrificing himself. The game doesn't leave you any time to think about it as you're sent running across a debris field to get back to the ride BT called in for you. Then you're done. As you fly away, the militia is living to fight another day. Losing BT hurts. It hurts a lot. But we would fight on, and while it may be a tough loss to handle, it didn't leave me down in the dumps. Maybe it's because I knew it was coming, but something about it just felt almost happy. Like BT got to go out on his own terms. There's something about someone going out like a hero in a grand gesture that makes it just a little bit more bearable. I also think that the brevity of the story shows its strength here. You had time to bond with BT, enough to trust him and enough to miss him, but in the grand scheme of things, he entered and exited our lives in a flash, and for that I'm thankful. Titanfall 2 is one of those games that exceeded itself. It just isn't something that should be as good as it is, but man, what a winner. I could talk about the multiplayer, but I think it's better left to it's great to play. Over the years, I've been trained to connect a game's runtime with its quality, and to some degree, it is true. Red Dead wouldn't have been the same without its scope. Mass Effect 3 really should have been 10 hours longer. And part of Cyberpunk is just how many stories there are for you to see. But on the other hand, AC Origins can easily consume 100 hours of your life, but only a few of them will be fun. Starfield is endlessly boring. The Witcher is a masterpiece, but no amount of playtime will ever make me interested in it. There's no defined correlation between game's length and enjoyment. Titanfall is proof of that. I may want more of this experience, and I hope we get another game, but I love that this experience remains so easy to recommend. All parts of this game are exactly what should be expected from developers now, starting with the actual story, in which we find a desperate tale of survival told at 100 miles an hour. We get two characters, Jack Cooper and BT7274, who probably say, 100 lines to each other? I'd be willing to bet it's not many, although I can't find a count anywhere, I'm not counting myself. But even with such limited interactions between you and your Titan, it's near impossible not to like BT by the end of the game, and not to get a little choked up hearing him ask you to trust him one last time. The gameplay speaks for itself, as it's fast, incredibly skill-based, and frankly just an absolute blast the vast majority of the time. The only unfortunate part about it, really, is that Apex came out of it, which is just the worst. Stop listening to me. Go play Titanfall 2. It deserves a solid player base. Well, that's that. I don't really know what else to say, if I'm honest. Thank you for all the support so far, and if you're not already subbed, do me a favor and hit that button. It really helps out. I can't tell you for sure what's coming out next because I really don't know. Outside of the Cyberpunk video, but that's most likely going to be December, so we'll have something in between to be sure. Anyways, though, guys, that'll be it for today. This is Purple signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile. Thanks, guys.
After the tech swipe what's left of my neural link with BT. I don't know what that'll feel like to get assigned a new Titan. I kinda like the old one.
Great job on Titanfall, to all of you.
This is Pilot Jack Cooper, signing off.